Hello everyone. Welcome to the most non-technical talk of I.T.A.K.E. I'm Flavius. I have two hats basically. I'm VP of Engineering at the company in Timișoara called Untitled, and I am also an Agile coach with MosaicWorks. I tend not to do that job that much these days. I used to do it for full time for a long while. To tell you why I chose this topic, I want to share with you a story. So, at one point I was coaching in a company that was adopting Agile, Scrum namely, and my role was to coach a Scrum Master. We had 2 sessions every week for 1.5 hours in which I would provide guidance to her, me being the Agile coach for the company. And at one point, she comes and shares a story with me, and she says, you know what, I've been to this scaling Agile training, it was really great, and the one thing I learned in that training is that in Agile there are no managers anymore. Okay, I said, so then what happened? Well, you know what, I went to the QA manager and I said to him, you know what, in this team you don't have a role anymore. And you know what, you need to choose. You need to either be part of the team, or maybe you need to find a different team in the company. Now, you can imagine the type of problems that discussion caused. Like it took 10 more meetings to finally solve all the issues, because I mean, there's a lot of confusion, right? If you look around, if you look on Twitter, there's a hashtag no management thread, in which you've got people saying there is no reporting to the project management, there is no management in Scrum. I'm saying, okay, look, it's even got 3 retweets, so people tend to agree with that type of view. And then you go online and you read the Wall Street Journal, or you read the Washington Post, right? And you read these titles: The End of Management. Zappos says goodbye to bosses. And to me, it's a bit confusing, right? I mean, the big problem is, I think, that Agile has been primarily interested with the team. We know we have our Scrum, we have our Kanban, we've got our continuous integration, we've got all of the team-oriented practices. But always a team will be in the context of a larger organization, right? We've got other teams in the same department, we've got different departments. And who in there in the organization tends to navigate between all these teams? Management usually. Now, I wanna hear about you guys. How many of you work in an Agile team? So everybody. Okay. How many of you work in a team that has no boss, no manager? Kind of makes sense. I mean, we still haven't figured out the way to do that. How to go, how to involve management in this process, because if you take a look at the literature, on the left, you see a lot of the books on generic Agile. And there are hundreds of them. I mean, personally, I've read probably 20 or 30 books on Agile. But then when you look at Agile management, there are maybe 2 authors that write on it. It's Jürgen Appelo and recently Angel Medinilla. But that's it. So it should come as no surprise that when people get surveyed, and this is a survey from this year, organized by a tool vendor called Version 1, 2 of the top 3 reasons why Agile tends to fail are related to management in one way or another. So be it the culture or lack of management support. Okay, now before we move on, I want to clarify what type of management I mean. So it's not project management, it's more line manager, higher level management, the people that do the hiring, the firing, the staffing, the people that set the constraints, that define some sort of priorities, some vision, right? Career paths and so on. Now, if we want to understand the role of the manager in an Agile company, where do you guys suggest we went? Where would you go to figure out what the agile manager should behave like? Now, my instinct is to try and go to the root of it all. And to me, the root of agile is the Agile Manifesto. That's where, when I get confused about agile, that's where I tend to go back to. And let me ask you this. Are you guys familiar with it, with the manifesto? Yeah, some of you. Can you guys tell me if it says anything about management? No?
Teams should be self-managing.
Yeah, so that's one. Actually, I was surprised. When I was doing this talk, I went back to it, and there are 12 principles. And 2 of them are actually about management, right? So the first one is build projects around motivated individuals. Give them the environment, the support they need, trust them to get the job done. That to me sounds like an advice you'd give managers, right? The second one is what you mentioned about self-organization, right? The best architectures, requirements, and designs emerge from self-organizing teams. So it would seem as there are 2 topics we could discuss about. Motivation, self-organization. Now, granted, management is such a large topic, I could probably speak for weeks about it, but I chose to speak about these 2 because they are directly derived from the Agile Manifesto. So, let's talk about motivation first. Let me ask you this. Tell me a number, 1 to 5, on how motivated you feel at work right now. How motivating the company that you work in is to you right now. Raise your hands, please, if you're there. 3s, 4s, 3s, 3s, 4s, 3s. There's a 5. I want to talk to you afterwards. But, you know, it's really sad because if you read some of the surveys that go on worldwide, every year a big management company would go out and ask companies in a country or another, how engaged do you feel at work? What do you think those numbers are? What percentage of the workforce do you think feels motivated to come at work every day? Is it 80%? 70? 50? 10? Well, it depends a bit on the country, but I can give you 2 numbers. So, Germany, it's 16%. The US does better. They are at 33%. But what does that mean, really? It means that if you're in Germany, you or 5 of your colleagues come to work every day not giving a crap. If you're in the US, maybe it's a bit better. It's only 2 out of 3 of your colleagues, right? It's, in a sense, something like you go to work and there's that writing on top of it. Abandon all hope, ye who entered here. I think it's sad. And let's try to decompose motivation. So there's 2 types of motivation. There's extrinsic motivation. That's what traditional management does. The carrot and the stick. And there's the place where as agile managers, as members of agile teams, we would like to see motivation stem from, which is the intrinsic motivation. And I'll talk about both of them in turn. So, extrinsic motivation. This is probably the biggest source of power for traditional management, right? They get to say how much you make, who gets the raise and who doesn't get the raise. And I propose that in an agile company, in an agile team, we should try to demystify this. I propose that everyone in the team should understand for the role that they work on, what are the levels. This we tend to know. What's less clear, at least in some companies, is how do you get to move from one role to the next, from one level to the next one. And I would say this needs to be clear. For instance, you know what, senior developer, you need to have at least 5 years of experience, for instance, in order to get to that level. Or other types of rules and constraints. And then the role of management becomes that of helping every single individual move to the next step. It should be an ongoing plan. Like for instance, in my team, I have a junior developer that's really good technically. And we discussed together, and it's been an ongoing discussion for the last 6 months. And basically, he and I together, we set a goal that by September, he would move on to the next level, provided that he continues the technical aspect. And I asked him, okay, what do you want to change? Where do you feel you're still lacking at the moment? And he gave me the answer that I already saw in his behavior with the team. Like, he wants to be better integrated with the team. He wants to speak up. He wants to contribute more to the life of the team. Now, another proposal that I'm going to make, maybe it's going to sound a bit weird, but I would say that these promotions should be based also not just on individual performance, but also on how well the team is doing and how well the company is doing. So you could say, you know what, we'll create a very simple rule that says 50% it's you, is the individual, but then 30% is your team, 20% is the company. And that's the way we are going to evaluate whether you move from mid to senior, from senior to principal. What about bonuses, the second type of extrinsic motivation? Well, I really liked here one proposal from a guy called Jürgen Appelo, who is writing about management a lot. And he said, one more time, demystify the way money is being handled in your company, right? At the end of the year, the lucky few of us that do, get bonuses. How that happens is always a mystery. Now there's just the manager coming and saying, you know, you've got a 1%, a 5%, 10%, but nobody knows how they reached that conclusion, right? And that just reinforces the power structure. That just reinforces the notion that the manager is somehow above the team. So what Jürgen Appelo comes and says is, you know what, as manager, do your best, negotiate the raise budget with the rest of the company. But once you get it, you chunk it up into equal portions and you give it to the team members. Now here's the kick. They don't get to keep it for themselves, but all the money they need to redistribute to their colleagues. So what that means is that usually the money will arrive to the person that the team feels has contributed the most that year. And again, arguably this is a more democratic way of distributing wealth in the company. What about intrinsic motivation? There's a book by a guy called Jerry Weinberg. Maybe some of you have heard of him. And in it, there's the buffalo bridle, which is basically an Indian, a native Indian, saying something like, you can make buffalo go anywhere you like, as long as buffalo want to go there. The point being that it's a lot easier to get results with people that want to do something, like work with the people, not against them. So Daniel Pink, in his book Drive, has everybody heard of it? Read it? Okay, quite a bunch of it. Identifies these three key motivators: purpose, autonomy, mastery. I would argue that maybe he forgot the fourth, with it, which is connection. And we are going to talk about each and every one of them. So, autonomy. The feeling that you get to make some, most choices at work. A couple of ways, as a manager, you could do this, is one, help your team put up some visual radiators. boards, metrics, that kind of thing. Why? Why would this matter? You know what? On the one hand, we say we want to take the power, or at least some of it, from management and give it to the team. But at the same time, we need to give them the tools. Right? We're getting rid of managers, or at least most of their power. But there's still some management to be done. Unless you work in some sort of artsy craft shop, there still are some businesses to run, right? So one of the ways the managers can do that is teach teams how to set up whiteboards, teach them about maybe Kanban, about limiting work in progress, that type of thing. Maybe helping them select 2 or 3 key metrics that they track, not the manager. The second one, Orange Fridays, is something that we've been experimenting with for the last 2 or 3 months. Maybe you've heard about the 20% Google time, or maybe the FedEx days at Atlassian. Basically, it's, in our case, every second Friday, we set it aside for whatever. That is, the team members get to decide what they work on in that day. We're bringing cakes, we're bringing cookies and fruits and all of that. And the only rule they have is that they should work on something that they feel will directly contribute to the well-being of the company. And in a few days, we worked on developing a skeleton of REST API, a web app that connects to that API, a mobile application that connects to it. We worked on understanding how React, this new JavaScript framework, would connect and fit into that. And it's really amazing to see the kind of productivity you can get if you just step aside. Now, the second one, purpose. As we know, Agile focuses a lot on value, client value, customer value. And arguably, this is a key to getting motivated individuals, because in the traditional company, what do? You come at work, you have a task, you don't know why you need to work on that task. You just know that some project manager, some team leader, some other type of manager just handed you that task. And it's really a motivation killer. And I think what we need to help people understand is how what they are doing contributes to the greater good, be it at the customer level, be it at the company level. For instance, I was discussing with my team lead at one point, and we were debating how much time he should spend on coding, how much time he should spend on mentoring people and coaching them. And basically, he didn't have a clue how to make that decision. And we sat down and we discussed, and we said, you know what, we've got 3 people that have joined the team in the last year. Where do you think the most productivity gains could be obtained? If you work 6, 7, 8 hours a day every day, if you spend more time with them. And she said, you know what, yeah, thank you, that helps me clarify. I think that if I do 3 hours of work every day, like coding on the most difficult topics, and then spend the other 5 mentoring them, I think as a team, as a company, we'll be better off. The second one is, again, something we've been experimenting with recently. Every time we finish a release, what we do an offsite. We leave our desks, we leave our office, we go someplace nice, we have a few drinks, we have something nice to eat, and we just sit for a moment and say, okay, let's, outside of all the stream of work that comes in every day, what are we doing? What's our strategy? How do we work together as a team? Does it work? Is the way we're working? And again, the team comes and says, you know what? Let's change things one way or another. Mastery. I think technical managers need to advocate in the company so that their teams get 20% of their time to spend on refactoring, testing, learning new frameworks, etc. I think technical managers absolutely need to do this. And by the way, I haven't asked, how many of you are in a management, team lead kind of position? Okay, so a lot of you. All right. For the rest of you that did not raise your hand and are wondering how to apply these ideas, I think if we say we're working in an agile company, it should be okay for you guys to go to the managers and say, here are a couple of things that I've heard about. I think we should do them. T-shaped people, there's been a lot of talk in other talks about this. Funnily enough, do you know the concept? Like you have a very narrow specialty, and then you have a lot of other subspecialties that you aren't that good at, but you could do. And my team lead, as I was telling about this point to him, he said, you know what? I think I am T-shaped right now, but I feel like I want to be octopus-shaped. Like, you know, maybe get one or two other deeper specialties. Okay, connection. This is the fourth type of motivation. And I think here, let me tell you a story. So I remember one team that I was working in, and I felt a lot of mastery in what I was doing. The purpose was really clear. I even had enough autonomy to make a lot of choices. But I think my main problem was I really didn't care about anybody in that team. And it was really sad, actually, because at the end of the day, I couldn't wait to go home. Now, at the other extreme, there was a team that I worked with last year, and at the end of the day, a lot of us would stop and play FIFA until 8 o'clock in the evening. And somebody would go out and get a couple of beers. And I think connection and feeling related to those around you is really important. As managers, two ways we could do that is one, obviously encourage pairing as much as possible. That tends to bring out problems in the team and create bonds. And also encourage participation at social events, things like hackathons, meetups, that kind of thing. Help people connect with one another. Even inside the company, arrange meetings where the sales guy, who tends to be always guilty for something, for not understanding what we do, for pushing features into us, you might figure out that he's a pretty decent and sensible person. Most importantly, I think motivation comes from feeling safe at work. And there's this concept called engineering that has been proposed by Joshua Kerevsky of Industrial Logic. Engineering comes from Japan. It's from Anzen, which is basically related to safety at work. And he said that, you know what, the engineers should protect one another from hostile relationships, from death marches, from burnout, from crappy code, basically, right? You should have a good chair, you should have good lighting. And I think the manager needs to be the first engineer, the chief engineer. All right, self-organization. Again, the same poll. How many of you feel right now that they are in a team, 1 to 5, let's make it simple, that they are in a team where they get to make a lot or most of the choices? Okay. Oh, that's actually good. That's actually really good. So, okay, self-organization. Self-organization, self-organization, self-organization. There's a lot of self-organization talk going around, right? It's kind of a buzzword, really. What does it describe? It describes this type of team. This team that's tightly knit, that takes responsibility, that makes their own choices, that are fully engaged. So you say, oh, self-organization, yeah, I want myself some of that. And then you go and read about Semco, which is this Brazilian company, and its CEO comes and says, no one works for money alone, and tapping into what people want from their careers and what they have to offer is essential. So in this company, for instance, you get to set your own salary. And you say, yes, I'll have myself some self-organization. And then maybe you're a gamer and you've played Half-Life or Counter-Strike. And then you hear about the Valve Employee Handbook which is basically this little book that you get when you join the company, and it says, we don't have any management, and nobody reports to anybody else. Right? We have a founder, president, but even he isn't your manager. This company is yours to steer, and you say, yes, I want some of that self-management, and then you read some more, you read about Zappos, who is abolishing management and it's installing this holacracy, and they say it enables employees to act more like entrepreneurs and self-direct their work instead of reporting to a manager. And you get really excited. But once the excitement maybe cools off a bit, you realize that self-organization has a lot of assumptions behind it. You know what? You really need people with high skills. You need people that are T-shaped, that are team players, that are co-located, that take responsibility, that are long-lived as a team. And you know, as I was thinking about this, it really seemed to me, you know, you're talking about this type of team. This is Barcelona, for those of you that don't follow football. They win quite a lot of titles. And you say, yes, self-organization, I want to be in a Barcelona type team. Yes, I want that. But then you look around and you say, you know what? Maybe I'm more in a kind of Poli Timișoara type of team. I'm from Timișoara. You know, they just went from the first league to the second this year. Because you look around and you say, yes, I would really love to have that type of self-organization, but I've got two people that are fresh out of college. I've got a third person who is really skilled technically, but he will enter into any technical conversation, and of the 15 minutes at the daily stand-up, he will speak for 20 minutes. And then we've got the other person who is kind of reclusive, and because we've got the flexible schedule policy, comes in at work at 1. And then we've got the fifth person that's really shy and doesn't want to get involved. So then you think, okay, I've got a problem, right? Because it's a lot like the instructions you get in one manual for how to draw an owl. So we've got this, we've got the two circles right now, and we want some of that valve Zappos thing, right? So then, okay, what do I do? On the one hand, I don't really think that I could delegate as a manager full responsibility to the team right now. I don't think that it's ready. On the other hand, I would like to see them motivated and fully engaged, right? What do you choose? Do you choose the red pill? Do you choose the blue pill? Kind of like in Matrix. And herein lies the problem, because a lot of managers assume that these two are mutually exclusive. You either delegate or you control things. And that's it. When in fact, there's a whole gradient of things. You could tell people what to do, but you could also sell it to them. Guys, let me convince you that my idea is right. At the next level, you could consult them and you could say, you know what, I need to make this decision. What do you guys think? Moving further towards full delegation, you get to agree. Let's talk together as equals and come to a joint decision. Then you move to advise. Guys, it's your decision to make, but here's my opinion. You move to inquire. It's your decision to make, but before, at the end, you do make it, just let me know what it is. And then there's full delegation. So, the way an agile manager would foster more self-organization is to first try to understand where he sits. Just list all those responsibilities that he or she does right now, and put a star at the level of authority they have. And then just gradually shift to the right. Now I'm going to come clean. I did this for myself. And it's looking, I mean, I have an average of 3.9. 3.9 is basically somewhere around here. Valve would probably be more around this area of the spectrum. One thing to know. As you move from one person holding all the power to the team holding the power, there's a problem. There might be a problem. That is, the power moves from the manager to the most vocal guy in the team, or the most senior person in the team. And in that case, I think we need to act as orchestra directors. Do you guys know what's the most important thing that the orchestra director needs to do? I mean, why is that person there? Like, we applaud the director, like he's doing some really important thing, but when he's just holding a stick and going like this, like, what's the difficulty in that? Well, it turns out that the most important thing the director needs to do is to really listen, because he's the only person that can hear all the instruments that are being played at the same time. The quality of an orchestra comes in the moment that you feel that there's only one instrument, right? But you've got hundreds of instruments scattered throughout. And what he does is, she will hear the tuba player that is not playing loud enough, and then she will go like this. Or on the other hand, maybe the drum player is doing it too loudly, and he would go a bit like this. So trying to harmonize the voices. And I think in order to get this type of motivation and self-organization, as we shift power from management to the team, the technical person, the technical manager, needs to amplify some voices and dampen others. Okay, just a few more slides. Some of the other changes that we need. One is, I think you need to empathize more. There's this notion called the ladder of inference that basically says, you know what, there's a whole thought process that goes on between the moment you have some input, you see something going on around you, to the moment that you react to it. You select some data, you make some assumptions, you draw some conclusions, you form some beliefs, and then you act upon it. For instance, just recently, I was looking at the board. So selected data as I moved from my chair, I chose to look at the board. I could have chosen not to look at it. And I saw some data. The data was that everybody in the team had their name attached to a tag, to a user story, except for one person. At that point came in my assumptions. Okay, so that person must not be working right now. And I drew some conclusions. You know what? There's a 50-50 chance that maybe that person is slacking off. And I know that's evil. That's like the crappy management that you read about in books. But, I mean, I'll come clean. I formed this belief, but at least what I did was I realized that there's this ladder, and I said, okay, could you join me outside? I want to understand what you're working on. And he said, well, did you notice that in the done column I added 2 stories today? And I was like, oops, sorry. I was really embarrassed at the moment. So I think that as we move on, one of the things that needs to change for managers is going down the ladder. Like the moment you catch yourself making this snappy judgment is, let's talk about it. Here's what I'm seeing. What are you seeing? A second proposal might be a bit controversial, and that is, I think management needs to get back to the technical things. Like, as you move more and more power to the team, and as you delegate more and more choices to them, I really believe that in the future, all of the managers need to get back to their technical roots. I really don't think there's a place in IT in the future for people that just manage. Maybe it is at the higher levels in the organizational chart, but for middle management, I see their role as the way Toyota sees them, more of a technical coach. Sure, technical excellence, we read about it, we need to encourage it, because one of the problems with Agile is that it comes with this iteration concept. And if you're not properly trained technically, if you don't keep your code clean, if you don't do refactoring, if you don't have the unit tests, you will be iteratively digging yourself into a hole. And I think we also need to help people see waste. This is one of the things I'm struggling with at the moment. For instance, we did this big infrastructure redesign, and it took us about 8 days, which is kind of a lot of work. I had to justify it to my peers in management. I had to explain why it was important for the team so that they could have speed in the future. But then, after that, one day passed, everything was okay, and a problem occurred as a result of the change. And we spent 3 other days to fix it. And at the end of the 3 days, it was, oh my God, great, we fixed it, let's get back to work. And to me, I think the role of the manager is in moments like that to step in and say, no, let's just take 1 hour and realize what happened. Let's learn a bit. Let's see where the waste in our process has been so that we can remove it in the future. Final slide. These are some questions I still have. These are some things I did not figure out just yet. Like, there's one idea about the salary formula. Now, make all the salaries transparent. Every role has a base salary. You get a plus 10% if you're a mid, plus 20% if you're a senior, plus 40% if you're whatever. You get a plus X% for as many years as it's been in the company. You've got plus 1% for... So, at any moment, you could understand the salaries of your colleagues. I don't know if that works. I mean, at least in Romania, I pitched this idea to, I think, 3 teams, and they all were like, oh, that wouldn't work in our case. But that would be one form of extreme transparency and democracy. Firing. How would that work in a fully self-organizing team? After working together for 1 year, 2 years, 6 months with somebody, will the team be mature enough to say, you know what, we vote that you get fired? I don't know, it might work. I'm just really skeptic. Scrum Master role. I started being not that convinced that it's really a good idea, because I see one of the 2 directions here. On the one hand, you place a Scrum Master in the teams, and they act like project managers. Like a lot of the power shifts to them. On the other hand, you get Scrum Masters that are really weak and are just there like facilitators, like secretaries to the team. It's really hard to find the middle type of project manager, of a Scrum Master. And the last question I have is, these teams are, the self-organizing teams run on the assumption that they're really entrepreneurial, that they understand the business, that they care about the business, about the domain. How do we inspire that more? This was my talk. If you've got answers to those questions, or at least ideas, please come talk to me afterwards. If you've got any questions, I'll be happy to take them now.